In every era of human histories, people have looked to the skies, the stars, and ancient texts in search of answers. But what if some of those answers were actually warnings? Warnings not just for their time, but for ours. From crumbling stone tablets to whispered prophecies passed down through forgotten tribes, ancient civilization left behind chilling predictions about a time far beyond their own. And one year seems to appear again and again, 2025. Were these ancient seers simply weaving myths and imagination? Or did they truly glimpse something terrifying in the distant future? Some speak of great floods, others of celestial events, devastating plagues, or the return of long vanished gods. These are the warnings etched into the bones of history, and the year they all point is to almost here. This is not a story of fiction. This is a journey into ancient fears and the future we may not ready to face. Welcome to the most terrifying prophecies of 2025 from the ancient people. The Hopi prophecy and the coming of the blue star. Hidden in the vast, sun-scorched mesas of northeastern Arizona, the Hopi people have lived in quiet isolation for centuries, untouched by many of the modern world's changes, yet carrying with them some of the most mysterious and chilling prophecies ever spoken. Unlike many ancient civilizations that left behind grand monuments and written manuscripts, the Hopi encoded their wisdom in oral tradition, rock art, and symbolic ritual. For them, the truth of the world, past, present, and future does not lie in books or buildings, but in nature, dreams, and sacred cycles. Among these truths is a prophecy so haunting, so precise, that many believe it may be now coming to pass. The Hopi believe that the world have been created and destroyed not once, but 3 times before. Each time, humanity was given a chance to live in harmony, and each time, we failed. The first world was destroyed by a fire, the second by ice, the third by a great flood. Now, we live in the fourth world, a world that teeters constantly between balance and destruction, and according to Hopi prophecy, this world too will end. But not in a sudden cataclysm. Instead, it will dissolve slowly through a series of signs, what the Hopi calls the 9 warnings. Events that signal the final phase before the arrival of a mysterious force known as the Blue Star Kachina. The Blue Star, or Sakuasho, is said to be the final harbinger. When it appears in the sky, unmistakable, glowing with an eerie blue light, the Hopi say that the great purification will begin. Not just a physical event, but a spiritual reckoning. A time when all illusions will collapse. When the fabric of lies woven by modern civilization will tear apart. And when those who live out of balance with the earth will face consequences they can no longer escape. For generations, the Hopi elders have warned of the coming signs, and one by one, many of these signs seem to have seemingly unfolded. They foretold of the spider webs in the sky, interpreted by some of our power lines and telecommunication satellites. They spoke of the land crisscrossed by iron snakes and stone rivers, seen by others as railroads and highways. They warned that people would come disconnected from the earth, chasing technology and false prophets, believing they are wise while forgetting the old ways. And they describe a world where families would fall apart, where people would walk in confusion, and where even the seasons would forget their place. In recent years, climate disasters, pandemics, mass disinformation, social unrest, and global instability had led to some to wonder, are we seeing the final pieces of the prophecy falling into place? Even more mysterious are recent reports from astronomers who in 2020 and 2023 observed a bright blue-hued celestial object, a possible supernova appearing unexpectedly in the night sky. It quickly ignited interest among those familiar with the Hopi warnings. Could this be the blue star the elder spoke of? Or is it still on its way? Yet, not all Hopi elders interpret the prophecy in the same literal way. Some believe the blue star is not a physical object at all, but a symbol, a turning point in human consciousness, a spiritual mirror that forces every individual and society to confront what they have become. In that view, the purification is not about fire from the sky, but fire within, a dismantling of ego, greed, and systems that no longer serve life. In that way, 2025 becomes not just on a date on a calendar, but a spiritual crossroad, a test. One respected elder once said, "The time will come when you will see a blue star in the sky. And when it comes, you must be ready, not with fear, but with truth in your heart. Because those who live without balance will be swept away. But those who walk with the earth will be given the chance to begin yet again." Still, even as the world accelerates into uncertainty, the Hopi remain grounded, high atop the mesas, and they continue their traditional ceremonies, their dance, and their prayers, not to stop the prophecy, but to prepare for it, to face the coming changes with humility and courage. Because to the Hopi, prophecy is not fate, it is a warning, and every warning carries with it a choice. And now, as 2025 approaches, the questions hangs heavy in the air. Have we already chosen? The real end of the Mayan calendar, a hidden warning for 2025. In the final months of 2012, millions of people around the world were caught in the growing wave of fear, fascination, and speculation. All eyes turned to the ancient Mayan long count calendar and to one specific date, December 21st, 2012. For some, it marked the end of time. For others, the beginning of a new consciousness. But as the date came and went without the incident, the world let out a collective sigh of relief, and then moved on. Or so it seemed. Because what most never realized was this: the Maya never said the world would end in fire or chaos in 2012. They never spoke of apocalypse in the Hollywood sense. There was no prophecy of exploding planets or falling stars. No ancient text ever claimed that everything would vanish in an instant. Instead, what they predicted was something much quieter and far more unsettling: a shift, a reset. The end, not of the earth itself, but of an age. The Maya saw time not as a straight line, but as a circle. Everything moves in cycles, day into night, seasons into seasons, rise into fall. And their calendar, the long count, wasn't made to end, but to measure these grand cosmic cycles. The completion of 13 Pactuns, nearly 5,126 years, was an extraordinary event, one that marked the closing of the fourth sun, or fourth world, and the beginning of the fifth. But beginnings in the Mayan worldview are never instant. They emerge slowly, like the sun rising through mist after a long storm. Some Mayan elders even warned, after the end of the Pactun cycle, there would be a transition period, a time when the old world would not yet be gone, but a new one not yet born, a period of disorientation, collapse, transformations, what they called a time between worlds. The interim age, according to certain interpretations of post-conquest Mayan writings and oral teachings, would last 13 years, one final trachena of years to test humanity's soul. And that windows, it ends in 2025. Since 2012, the world has indeed been moving, but not upward, not clearly forward. Instead, we've descended into something strangely uncertain, a fog. Global trust has eroded. Systems once thought unshakable financial, political, environmental, are beginning to fracture. Climate events once considered rare now happen yearly. Forests burn, seas rise, the earth trembles in places it never did before. Ancient ice melts, revealing forgotten bones of civilization and species long buried. Technologies once hailed as miracles have turned into double-edged swords. Artificial intelligence, digital surveillance, and social fragmentations are shaping a future faster than humans can adapt. In many places, people are more connected digitally, yet more spiritually and emotionally disconnected than ever before. This, the Maya might say, is the test. Some cliffs in partially Persephus Cotis, like those from Dresden and Metric Codex, hint at cataclysm, yes, but not necessarily of physical destruction. They speak of collapse from within, of values unraveling, of sacred relationship between humans and nature, between generations, between body and spirit, being forgotten. The prophecy isn't just about Earth, it's about us. And perhaps that's why, in the highlands of Guatemala among the modern Maya, some daykeepers have sounded a quiet alarm that say 2025 is not the event, it's the point of no return. One elder described it this way: "We are now standing at the end of the sacred bridge. If we cross it with clean hearts, a new cycle begins. But if we turn away, the old world will crumble beneath us." For those who listen, the instructions are simple, yet difficult. Return to harmony. Remember the earth. Uplift what is sacred. Abandon what poisons the soul. If we fail, the prophecy warns of slow disintegration. Not one that will destroy humanity in an instant, but one that will hollow us out from the inside, until eventually there is nothing left worth saving. Interestingly, some research have noted that several ancient cultures, not just the Maya, also predict a moment of reckoning or transition around this decade. The Hopi, the Hindu Yugas, even interpretation of Nostradamus all seems to echo a strange resonance around the mid-2000s. Is it a coincidence? Or are we missing something? A deeper rhythm woven into the fabric of time. It's worth remembering that when the Spanish conquistadors destroyed much of the Mayan civilization, they tried to erase its knowledge, burning codices and silencing priests. But a handful of teachings survive, encoded in stone, preserved in memory, protected in ceremony. And among them was this warning: when the sky speaks and the earth trembles, when the river runs strange and the people forget who they are, the great cycle shall close, and in that darkness, light must be chosen. That time, they said, would not be marked by war or fire, it would be marked by choice. And now, as the shadow of 2025 grows longer, we must ask, are we witnessing the slow closing of the bridge? Or are we passing the final threshold? Or have we already crossed it without even knowing? The Norse prophecy of Ragnarok. Long before the rise of modern nations, long before science and satellites, the Norse people of Scandinavia looked to the stars, to the wind, to the frozen earth beneath their feet, and told stories. But their stories were just never tales. They were warnings. Among these ancient stories, none is more terrifying or final than Ragnarok. Translated as the fate of the gods, Ragnarok is the Norse apocalypse, a prophecy of fire and frost, of divine wars, of a world torn apart and remade. At first glance, it seems like myth, a poetic vision of gods and monsters, of Odin riding into battle, of Thor striking down the world's serpent only to fall from its venoms, of the earth sinking into the sea. But for those who look deeper, beneath the legend, Ragnarok begins not with war, but with signs. And those signs are eerily familiar. The ancient texts describe a world unraveling, a time of moral decay, of growing chaos, of unnatural seasons, and of a society turned against itself. In the Poetic Edda, one of the key sources of Norse mythology, these signs are laid out clearly. Brothers will fight and kill each other's. Sisters' children will defile kinship. Hard is the world, whoredom rife. An axe age, a sword age. Shields are sundered, a wind age, a wolf age, before the world falls. To ancient Norse seers, this wasn't just a poetic vision, it was a cycle, a repeatable pattern, a warning that when these signs began to appear, the end of an era was approaching. And now, some scholars and mystics have begun to ask, are we living in the wolf age now? Consider the details. The collapse of trust between people, nations, and even families. Endless conflict from global wars to civil unrest. Environmental chaos, an extreme weather lashes the earth, fire rages, and glaciers vanish. The breakdown of natural rhythms, with birds migrating in the wrong season, fish disappearing from the seas, and even the auroras, once rare, now glowing over strange skies. In Norse legends, these disturbances herald the arrival of Fimbulfetur, the Great Winter, a deep, unrelenting cold that lasts 3 years without summer in between. A symbolic, or perhaps literal, depiction of global disruption. And then comes the breaking of the chain. The monstrous wolf, Fenrir, long bound by the gods, is set to break free. The Midgard serpent rises from the ocean, spitting poison into the air and sea. The skies split, and a ship made from the nails of the dead sails towards battle, carrying the souls of the dishonored. While this may sound fantastical, many people have noted disturbing metaphors. Could the serpent's poison be a metaphor for pollution or toxic air? Could the ship of the dead represent a rise in mass death, plagues, or forgotten victims of society? And could Fenrir's breaking of chains symbolizes the unleashing of primal forces humanity can no longer control? But Ragnarok is not just the end, it's also the reset. According to the myth, after the chaos, the fire, and the floods, the world does not vanish completely. It is reborn. A new earth rises from the sea, survivors emerge, the sun returns, now reborn through the daughter of the original. A new era begins, one of peace, balance, and restoration. And that perhaps is the most chilling part of the prophecy, that even in Norse myth, destruction is not random, it is cleansing. It is meant to burn away what no longer serves life, so something new can grow. Many who follow Norse tradition called Asatru believe that Ragnarok is not about gods with hammers or world-ending peace. It is about cycles of human's folly and the inevitable reset that comes when we stray too far from the natural order. In this view, 2025 represents not a date foretold in the sagas, but a threshold year, the midpoint of our global winter, the moment before the great battle within ourselves and our civilizations begin. And perhaps that battle is not fought with swords or lightning, but with choice. Do we continue on path of isolation, division, and domination, or do we heed the ancient warnings? The Vikings believed that fate could not be avoided, but it could be faced with honor. Even at the end of the world, the true test of a soul was not survival, but how one stands before the fire. And maybe that's the lesson we've forgotten. Maybe 2025 isn't about the fall of the world. Maybe it's about how we rise from it. The Kali Yuga. In the sacred texts of ancient India, the Vedas and the Puranas, time is described not as a straight line, but as an eternal wheel. A great cosmic cycle composed of four fast ages, each one more corrupt and chaotic than the last. These are the Yugas. First came the Satya Yuga, a golden age where truth and virtue ruled. Then the Treta Yuga, a time of noble warriors and high ideals, followed by the Dvapara Yuga, a declining world of honor and conflict. And finally, the one we live in now, the Kali Yuga, the age of shadows. According to the ancient seers, the Kali Yuga is an age where virtue is nearly extinguished, where greed and lies thrive, where spiritual wisdom is forgotten, and where chaos spreads across the earth like wildfire. In the Vishnu Purana, the symptoms of the Kali Yuga are laid out with chilling precision. Kings will become unreasonable and will no longer see it as their duty to promote spirituality. People will prefer falsehood over truth, selfishness over duty, family bonds will weaken, greed will be viewed as wisdom, and those who speak the truth will be hated. These aren't fake poetic warnings, they are precise and eerily accurate. And though the Kali Yuga is said to last 432,000 years, the ancient sage noted something else, something largely forgotten outside of the yogic and theistic cycle. They describe smaller cycles within the Great Age, subperiods, turning points. One of the most studied is the concept of Sandhi, the twilight zone between ages. And according to the astronomical calculation in traditional Jyotish astrology, the most critical point in the tipping edge of the Kali Yuga's target phase lands squarely in our time. Specifically between 2025 and 2030. Some Vedic scholars argue that a major planetary conjunction which occurred in 2020 involving Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter marked the beginning of this intensified descent. But 2025, they warn, may be the year when the acceleration becomes unstoppable, because by then, humanity will have crossed an invisible line, a point where collective karma, environmental degradation, spiritual ignorance, and technological overreach create a kind of spiritual entropy, a collapse not just of systems, but of meaning itself. What does this look like? The ancient texts describe it in a deeply symbolic yet familiar terms. Forests will vanish, oceans will rise, the seasons will lose their rhythm, people will worship money, power, and artificial knowledge. Marriage will be a temporary contract, children will disrespect their parents, teacher will sell knowledge for profit, and the wise will fall silent. And those who speak of higher truths will be mocked, while the ignorance will be celebrated. And perhaps most haunting of all, the Kali Yuga is marked by forgetfulness, not just of morality, but of who we are, why we are here, where we came from. It is, in essence, the age of spiritual amnesia. But even within this darkness, the seers offered hope, because every cycle, no matter how long, eventually ends. And before the next age begins, something extraordinary happens. The world undergoes a pralaya, a cleansing, a collapsing of the old, sometimes violent, sometimes subtle, but always total. According to Bhavakata Purana, in the final stage of the Kali Yuga, a figure will emerge, a divine warrior named Kalki, riding a white horse, wielding a blazing sword, cutting down the corruption that has swallowed the earth. He is not born in heaven, but among men. He rises from within humanity itself. Some believe this is allegory. Others say Kalki is real and already alive. But nearly all traditions agree, before Kalki's arrival, the world will reach its lowest spiritual point. A moment when the flame of Dharma, the universal truth, flickers, nearly gone, And in some of esoteric yogic lineage, a prophecy has quietly circulated for generations. The 25th year after the second millennium shall bear the mark of the fire. Those who seek only survival will perish, but those who seek awakening shall endure the storm and see the morning of the new world. 2025. Could it be the flame year? The breaking point? The moment when illusion of progress collapses under its own weight, and something Asian, something sacred returns. In places like Varanasi, Rishikesh, and some sadhus have already gone silent, retreating from society to prepare, not from fear, but from knowing. For them, the world is not ending, it is remembering. And they believe that those who live not by headlines of fear, but by inner clarity, will find the path forward, even in the age of collapse. Because in the Vedic visions of time, the dark at night is always followed by dawn, but only if we survive the fire. The chilling visions of Nostradamus. Few names in the world of prophecy are as infamous as Nostradamus, a man both revered and ridiculed, feared and dismissed. Born in the 1500s in Saint Remy de Provence, France, Michael de Nostradamus was a physician by trade, but it was not his medical world that would survive the centuries, it was his visions. He claimed to receive them at night, staring into a bowl of water and herbs, entering a trance-like state. From those moments, he wrote down what he saw, not in plain speech, but in riddles, quatrains, four-line poems, laced with allegory, ancient symbolism, and deliberate ambiguity. He scattered them across 10 centuries of verse, covering events past, present, and future. And though he lived during the Renaissance, his word seems to echo eerily into our modern age, as if he glimpsed the distant shadow of a world yet to come. Now, over 450 years later, his writings are being studied again, not just by historians or conspiracy theorists, but by scholars, linguists, and even political analysts. Because a growing number believe that 2025, a year we are already living in, may be one of the most pivotal dates embedded in his cryptic code. Nostradamus rarely gave exact dates. He avoided specific calendars, preferring to use planetary alignments, poetic riddles, or fake references like after 7 months or in the New Age. This ambiguity was deliberate, partly to protect himself from religious prosecution and partly because he believed the future was fluid, shaped not only by fate, but by choice. Still, his quatrains are filled with numbers, celestial markers, and symbolic names. Over time, many of these have been interpreted to align with real historical events. The rise of Hitler, whom he may have called Hister, the Great Fire of London, the French Revolution, even the September 11 attacks. But it is the first that seem to describe our present and near future that are now drawing the most attention. Several quatrains speak of a time where the truth will be hidden beneath waves of lies. A plague of minds will sweep the world, causing people to see without sight and hear only echoes. A shift in power will occur between the East and the West. New empires will rise through metal birds and talking mirrors. Nature herself will revolt, with fire falling from the sky, waters flooding the land, and the earth trembling in its depths. Interpreters have long debated what these metaphors mean, but viewed through the lens of our time, the images are strikingly familiar. Disinformation and algorithmic manipulation guiding society, mental health crises, echo chambers, and tribal thinking spreading across populations, China's rise, Russia's aggression, and the West's decline in influence. Technologies like drones, satellites, smartphones, and AI shaping a new kind of global empire. Climate disaster, wildfires, floods, quakes, intensifying with alarming speed. Even more unsettling is that several constraints seem to predict a cluster of cries. Events that don't happen in isolation but in succession, one after another, as if the world were entering a spiral. And this spiral that some researchers now link to 2025. Why 2025? Nostradamus never used the Gregorian calendar directly, but some believe he encoded dates throughout the astrological patterns. In recent decades, researchers have found alignments in his texts that point to a major disruptive period in the mid-2000s, particularly the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, a rare alignment associated with the fall of illusions and the collapse of false systems, last seen before World War I and set to return in around 2025 and 2026. The culmination of economic and political cycles of disintegration, often measured in 72-year patterns, with several beginning around 1945 and ending now. A mention of the 25th year after the Twin Fires, interpreted by some as 25 years after the September 11 attacks. Again, 2026 with 2025 as the year the tension peaks. Still, the most chilling passage comes from Century 8, Quatrain 15, which reads, "Great men shall fall by the light of the twin. New rulers shall rise from beneath the fog. A red star shall mark the sky with flame, and from 3 nations silence shall spread." To modern eyes, this passage has 3 deep concerns. The light of the twin, perhaps referring to the Twin Towers or dual events. A red star, possibly a solar storm or cosmic anomaly. NASA has projected heightened solar activity peaking between 2024 and 2026. Silence from 3 nations. Could this mean a cyber attack, EMP event, or collapse of communication? And if Nostradamus did foresee something like this, not as exact history but as a pattern, then 2025 may be the tipping point. The fire and the rebirth, but as always, Nostradamus' visions are double-edged. He speaks of fire, yes, but also of light. Collapse, yes, but also rebirth. In one of his most powerful quatrains, he writes, "After the fall of the Black Tower, when 3 suns appear in the sky, a hidden child will claim the crown, and peace shall return to a weary land." Some believe this Black Tower represents corruption, tech empires, or moral decay. The 3 suns perhaps symbolic of an astronomical event or geopolitical convergence, and the hidden child, a leader not yet known, a new movement, or even the reawakening of human consciousness. Because of Nostradamus, history was never final. The fire clears the way. The darkness forces us to look inward, and only when we face the worst of ourselves can we step into something new. He never told us what will happen, only that might if we refuse to change. And as 2025 nears its end, the question remains, are we living through the storm he saw in dreams half a millennium ago? Or are we still sleepwalking toward it?